after figuring out what doesn't work enough times, right, I eventually figured out what does work, and I started to gain some traction from that. And so from there, I started to see some success pretty quickly. By the time like I was a year into that business, I was making a 6-figure income. And so I went to my parents. I was like, hey, like, let me go all in this. Let me treat it like an internship. All right. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to school. But like, let me take 6 months to really go all in on this and just see what happens. And they agreed to that based on the results that I had. And I thank God for them for supporting me in that. And I ended up going all in, and it changed my life. It really did. I ended up building an organization of 10,000 affiliates within that company across 50 states, 20 different countries. I was able to travel the world, went to 22 different countries there. I ended up speaking on stages. I shared the stage with, Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, some very large people. Get speaking for 10,000 people. It was amazing. It really, really was. I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. And then one day I woke up and that company had shut down.
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined by a very special guest, Luke Hessler. How are you doing today, Luke?
I'm better now that I'm here.
I love to hear that, man. It's we were just talking a little bit earlier, but Mondays, man, I love Mondays.
Me too. I love Mondays. Yeah, like we were talking about a little bit earlier. I think it depends on your situation, though, because if you're in a job that you don't like, or, some sort of an employment situation that you just don't enjoy, then Mondays can be dreadful, because it's like, wow, I had this freedom of the weekend. I can do what I want, when I want, and now I got to go back to this thing that I hate. And that would be really tough. That would make me really not like Mondays as well. But when you love what you do, then Mondays are great, because it's an opportunity to get back in the game, and yeah, I hope everyone finds what they really love, so then they can start to enjoy Mondays.
I could not agree more, and I can't wait to get into a little bit more about your story. So one of the ways we always kick off the show is just talk about the importance of networking. How are we connected?
Yeah, we got connected through Olivia, I believe. It was a mutual friend. I have a working relationship with Olivia. I've been on her podcast as well, and she's awesome. And so I like her, I trust her, I respect her. And, she recommended you. She's like, Luke, you got to meet this guy and get on a show. I think you guys would vibe really well. And so here we are.
Olivia is just absolutely wonderful. I do every chance I get, just talk about how great she is. She's so good at connecting. And again, it's building that relationships even before you meet the people. When I heard your name come up, and I already knew who you were, but it was just that fact that Olivia kind of gave you that voucher, that head nod. It's always nice to have people in your network that you trust.
Yes, absolutely. It's I think your network is one of your most valuable assets in life. It's like you can lose everything. You can lose, your house, you can lose your bank account, you can have everything. But if you have a network and you have a skill set, you can really make things happen. And Olivia is just one of those people that I feel really blessed to have in my network as well. So,
Luke, I couldn't agree more. So let's jump into it, man. I want to know that comic book issue number 1, origin story. Who are you?
Ooh, comic book issue number 1. All right. So we'll start with my childhood. So I was raised with incredible parents. I hit the lottery when it comes to parents, quite frankly. I have they taught me that if I love God and treat other people as they like to be treated, then I can have or do anything that I wanted in life. So I grew up not hoping I would be successful, but expecting to become successful. And so that, I think, is a huge advantage that I was given when I was younger. In addition to them, I had 2 huge influences on my life. One was my aunt. She was the director of the Peace Corps, and so she was chosen by Obama for that. She gave me some very interesting experiences. I was able to go to Africa and just to see some different parts of the world that made me really see my life very differently, and see the world from more like a global lens than rather than just kind of like a local or national lens, which was really helpful for me. And then I also had my uncle. It was actually my great uncle, and he was in gas and oil, and he made a ton of money from that. And so I saw the freedom that came from that. And he always told me, Luke, as long as you love people and use money, and you don't love money and use people, he says, go become wealthy, because it's what determines freedom in this world. It determines the house you live in, the car you drive, the education that that your children can be able to go out there and have. And so go get that. And so I had these two big desires as a kid. I wanted to become successful. I wanted to go and help a lot of people. I didn't really know how I was going to do that, but those are the two things that I wanted. So then that brought me to Michigan State University. When I went to Michigan State, I wasn't playing sports anymore. In high school, I played 3 sports, and at Michigan State, I didn't have that, and I really missed the camaraderie, the energy, the brotherhood, and things like that. So then I ended up joining a fraternity. I didn't really party much in high school because I was really focused on sports, and then I didn't have these sports. I joined a fraternity. It was the cool thing to do to party, and I have kind of an addictive personality. I just go all in on whatever I do. So I went all in on the wrong thing my freshman year. And now I didn't get 1, but 2, and actually not 2. Actually, I got 3 minor in possessions of alcohol my freshman year of college, like an idiot. And coming from my family, if you know them, they're like, ultra conservative Christian family. So I might as well have murdered somebody, right? I remember calling my mom from the drunk tank, needing $250 to get out of this freaking drunk tank. And it was the worst phone call of my life. I remember looking in this mirror and having to pick up this phone. And it was a month and a half before that. I promised her, I'm going to change. I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm going to get focused. Da, 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 da. And now I lied, and I'm back in the situation. I got to call her at 3 a.m. again to bail me out of jail. And it was this moment of clarity for me where I was just never again. I don't know if you've ever had this moment, or anyone listening has, where you look in the mirror and you just almost don't even recognize the person that's looking back at you. I was overweight, I wasn't focused, I was prioritizing the wrong things, and I felt like I was just I was just a loser, frankly, and I knew that wasn't actually me, but that's how I was acting. And so in that moment, I made a decision that I didn't know how, I didn't know what, I didn't know where, but I was going to do something with my life, and I was going to prove to myself and prove to my family and to the world that, I could be of value to the society and I can be successful. And it started with me just taking school seriously, but then 4 months later, I was really blessed, and I was able to meet somebody who was making $40,000 a month from an online business. It was an affiliate marketing business, and I was like, this is something that I can do. I got excited about. I could work from anywhere. I could make as much money as I wanted based on my production, right? The more value I brought, the more money I could make. It was an opportunity to create passive income, residual income, and I was like, this is it. And so I went all in that business based on a loan from my parents. Actually, I went back because I had no money to start it, right? So I went to my parents and wrote a proposal for them, and I'm like, hey, give me a loan for $600 to start this thing. And they're like, it's a scam, and I'm like, no, it's not. I'm going to be rich. And they're like, no, you're not. You're an idiot. Go get good grades. And so they ended up giving me the money as a loan to teach me a lesson that these quote unquote things don't work. And 6 months in, they were right. But after 6 months in, and after figuring out what doesn't work enough times, right, I eventually figured out what does work, and I started to gain some traction from that. And so from there, I started to see some success pretty quickly. By the time I was a year into that business, I was making a 6-figure income. And so I went to my parents. I was like, hey, let me go all in this. Let me treat it like an internship. All right. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back to school, but let me take 6 months to really go all in on this and just see what happens. And they agreed to that based on the results that I had. And I thank God for them for supporting me in that. And I ended up going all in, and it changed my life. It really did. I ended up building an organization of 10,000 affiliates within that company across 50 states, 20 different countries. I was able to travel the world, went to 22 different countries there. I ended up speaking on stages. I shared the stage with, Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, Robert Kiyosaki, some very large people. Speaking for 10,000 people, it was amazing. It really, really was. I thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life. And then one day I woke up and that company had shut down. And so my income went from here to here. But worse than that, I had an organization of 10,000 people that trusted me, and their incomes went away as well. And so that was a tough moment for me that I had to kind of go and figure out and navigate. But thankfully, I was able to go out there and do that, where, we were able to help other people and make sure they were set up, and, I was okay as well. And then that eventually led me to launching my agency. That was in 2017. And ever since then, I've been in the agency space. So I help people grow and monetize their personal brands, because that's how I built that affiliate team. I learned how to grow a brand on social media, this digital asset that is our online reputation. And so I started teaching other people how to go out there and do that. And now I've been doing that for about 6 years now, teaching other people, doing it for myself for about a decade. And it's been such a blessing. I've met the coolest people. And like we talk about networking, it's my favorite part of what I do. I get to just meet those amazing individuals. We're blessed to work now with over 1,500 clients, and some of them as large as Dr. Seuss, all the way down to startup entrepreneurs and thought leaders in that space, and really everything in between. And so now what brings me to where I'm at, and what motivates me is I'm a father. I just had my My daughter just turned one. I'm married, and I'm really committed to being able to give them the life that they deserve, and wanting to be able to provide the freedom that I believe that they deserve in their life. And so that's something I'm really committed to from a financial and business standpoint. But bigger than that too, I just love, like, for me, when I look back in my life, I've had a lot of the things, like when I was younger and 20 years old, making 20 grand a month, you buy a Rolex or you buy a Mercedes, and you think these things are going to make you happy because you're really, at least for me, I was very dependent on what other people thought of me. I got a lot of my self-worth from how other people thought of me. So I wanted to look like the guy. And it's cool for a little bit, but when you lose it all, you realize that, wow, these people didn't actually like me for me. They liked me for what
Yeah.
they could be around me and get from me, right? And it made me reassess my priorities. So now, really, I find that what makes me the most joy is serving other people. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. I feel blessed to have gone through a lot of experiences. Like even the story I just told you, I left out a ton of downs, right? That's the highlight reel. I could give you all the times, I've been really hit hard, and I've learned lessons, and I've persevered through that. So I want to share that stuff with other people. I want to be able to impact the world, and the mission of our company is to serve those who serve others. So we want to go find impact-driven thought leaders, entrepreneurs, businesses, and we want to amplify their voice, through digital PR, primarily press, podcast, TV, because that's what we have access to. So that's what I focus on every day, is just serving our clients, finding new people to be able to go and serve, and sharing some of the insights that I've learned along the way that maybe could be helpful for other people. So
Luke, I love all that, man. I want to rewind a little bit. And you mentioned growing up, you kind of came from a more conservative household. I believe you came from the Midwest, correct? You grew up there?
I did. Yep, Northern Michigan.
And so I'm from Wisconsin, and one thing I learned is a lot of times the Midwest, we have our Midwest work ethic. We are a lot of times blue collar. We go and work, we put in our work, we get overtime, we do it like that. When you were learning entrepreneurship and things like that, how did your relationship with money change?
Such a good question. So I was raised to believe that the smartest people in the world made the most money. Like the way you become successful is you go to high school, get good grades, go to college, get good grades, make a resume, apply for a job, work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, and retire on 40% of your income, right? This is the plan that I was taught, because the plan that my father took, right? He's a doctor. So like, and it worked for him, right? So of course, that's what he's going to be taught. When I found entrepreneurship, it was a totally different game, because and something that my parents were very unfamiliar with. And so that was the biggest reason that there was restriction and resistance in the beginning, right? They gave me the money as a loan to teach me a lesson that these things don't work, is because it was it was territory that they were just unfamiliar with. And I believe that it is human nature to reject things that we don't understand. And so I know that my parents just want what's best for me. And so they had a plan that worked for them. So naturally they're going to be like, follow this plan. And if they see someone going against that plan, it can be scary. And so I had to kind of like rewire my brain. I read a lot of books. I went to a lot of seminars. I listened to a lot of audios, and I was really blessed to have some incredible mentors that were able to kind of like show me a different way. And when I started to think of money as a tool, I started to learn about leverage. I started to study like Robert Kiyosaki. I think the best way for people to start is like Rich Dad Poor Dad. Such a basic, simple concept, but it really changes the way you think about money. Starting to understand that cash flow quadrant of like, you're employed, then a business owner, then a big business owner, then an investor, and like flowing through those quadrants. Getting that financial education was life-changing for me, because quite frankly, I was paying the tax of ignorance, right? And the tax of ignorance is the cost of whatever it is for what you don't know, right? Like, I would have, if I would have never been introduced to this information, I likely just would have got a normal job, and just been, probably a decently high-paying employee, because I would have probably gone the doctor route or lawyer or something. Not doctor. I hate blood. I passed out when I was 10 when I saw blood for the first time. So I was like, not a doctor. Maybe a lawyer, maybe something like that, and my life would be okay, but I wouldn't have the freedom. I wouldn't have the fulfillment. And I may be one of those people we talked about at the beginning that was like dreading Mondays, And so now being able to learn how money works was a complete game changer, for me. And it's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about it, and why I like to show on these podcasts and talk about it, is because I know that information can change people's life, because it changed mine.
Luke, I love that, man. It's one of those things that I completely agree with. The more you can rewire your brain, and I think sometimes you don't even realize how you're unlocking it for other people, not just yourself, but your friends. And not everyone's going to go on that same journey with you, but it's kind of cool to see people from the sidelines that you've grown up with, that you know, and they're like, "Hey, man, I thought you were going to do this," or "Hey, man, I actually didn't think you were going to do it, I'm glad you did it, or I'm glad you figured it out. And, it's just one of those interesting things about the more you're educated about something, I think, as you mentioned, the more you can help people.
Oh, it's so true, man. And what you just said about how like you stepping into your purpose and your passion and kind of like growing and leveling up, and how that like almost unconsciously gives those around you permission to do the same thing, right? Because they're like, wait a second, what are you doing? It's like, I remember you from high school. I remember you from this. Like, weren't you the dude that was, passed out, blackout drunk, that got the MIP, whatever. Like, and then they see you change. And like, wait a second, if you can make that happen, like maybe I could do something like that. And so I agree 100%. I mean, that you hear the analogy all the time in these podcasts, right? People are like, you got to put, when you're on the plane, right, you have to put your mask, your oxygen mask on first before you help someone else, right? And I think that's really important, because once you're breathing and you're good to go, it shows, number one, other people how to do it. And it also empowers you to then be able to go and teach other people, because you can't teach people how to do something you haven't done. So,
I couldn't agree more. Man, on everyone's journey, everyone's path, they make a decision. You can go east, you can go west, not really knowing the outcome. Can you give me a time in your life when you made one of those kind of decisions and how it turned out?
how much time you got?
I got all day, man.
There have been a lot of those decisions, man. There's been a lot of those decisions. So the most recent decision that I had around that was probably around launching my most recent agency that I have. So my current agency that I have is called Ace Branding. A little bit of context behind this is, so like when I first started my very first agency, it was called Invigorate, and we were in the social media growth space, primarily focused on Instagram growth. And we grew that company to the point where we had like 600 active clients that were paying on a monthly basis for us, and it was profitable. It was great. We were loving it. Challenge with that is that the way that we were growing was like connected to Instagram's API, and they don't like that, right? And so what happened is they didn't update, and so like in a day, like everything we did was completely obsolete, right? And so we went from doing hundreds of thousands a month in revenue to zero again. And this happened to me a few times in my life, but anyways, so this happens, and so we're like, all right, we should be okay. We can navigate through this. We kind of knew that was coming, so we like anticipated like kind of like different options. But I ended up learning that in that time we'd take a look at our financials, right? Because we then like needed to like refund people. We need to figure out how much runway do we have, to be able to go and figure this out. Da 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 da. Long story short is we ended up figuring out that our CFO at the time was embezzling money from the company. And it was a lot of money, enough to the point where like we didn't have any runway anymore, because the money that we thought was in the account is no longer in this account. And so it was a really big issue, not because like just like the company obviously has to be figured out, but like it was a homie, right? Like it was a friend. It was somebody that I trusted, and somebody that I came up with, and someone that I would never ever expect in a million years to do something like that. And so it hurt from a lot of standpoints, because it was hurt because the business, obviously that's a tough thing, and like now it's like we don't have the money to keep it going, so we had to close that business actually, and I then restarted another agency after that without partners. But then more than that, it hurt from like just like a human standpoint, because it made me question my ability to trust people. And in that moment, I remember kind of being like, maybe I just shouldn't trust people, like maybe people are bad, like, cause I always have had, like, I always see the best in people, I like to believe in humanity. I'm a big believer in humanity. And I always like to see the best in people. And that's burned me a couple times, but that was the time it burned me the most. And it made me really question just that outlook. And I was like, maybe I just shouldn't trust. Maybe I should just, maybe the humanity, the dark side of human nature really does prevail. And I should kind of go and look at it and play the game from that perspective. Right. But I had a conversation with my mom about this, and she helped me, because two things she helped me realize is, number one is that you need to trust people, but you have to trust but verify. And that was something I didn't do. I blindly trusted, right? Where it was just like, oh, he's a friend, of course it's going to be good to go. But what she always talked about is you have to trust but verify. So I'm going to trust people 100%, but you also have to verify that what they're saying is true. And in business, that's just good practice. So now, like, anytime that I go and I do business, even with a friend, like a good friend of mine, like, we always have contracts in place. We have everything always lined out, because it's like we trust each other, but like, let's verify this officially, right? And make it be professionalized from that way. And so that gave me that suggestion, that strategy gave me the ability to still have that trust and that faith in people, and giving people the benefit of the doubt with out with like kind of covering my backside risk, right? With like mitigating my risk around it there. And so that was a practical strategy for me to move forward. But the second thing that she went out there and told me about is just the fact that like people generally, like when you ask them why they did something, they usually think it's the right thing to do in their minds. They justify this, right? Everyone is right in their own eyes. And so that is something that once I started to realize that, it started to kind of like make me a little bit less judgmental on people and more curious. And so, for example, like this experience when my buddy, embezzled the money, we could have taken him to court. I could have sued the crap out of him. Could have done all those things, but I didn't do any of that. I asked him questions. I was like, what actually happened here? And what ended up actually happening was and this is still not right, but he ended up, we approved him to be able to invest some of the funds of the company too, because he was in trading and like all this kind of stuff. And he had a decent track record in that. And so we allocated a certain amount of funds he could go and invest. He invested that and he lost the money and it was really embarrassing for him. And so he's like, oh, I know I'll be able to make it back. So let me just take a little bit more. I'll make it back. Then I'll put back what I took. They'll never know and it'll be good. So he's trying to save face. And then he lost that. And then he tried to take a little bit more. And then he lost that. And then it got really bad in that way. And so like what started off as actually a good intention, which was him trying to help the company grow and increase its revenue, ended up turning into this really bad thing because of his inability to admit that, right? And so, but his intention originally was right. It doesn't mean what he was doing was right. It doesn't take away the need for justice in any way. But once you start to kind of, I said it in the first person, once I started to see it that way, again, I became a lot less judgmental of other people and I became a lot more curious. And so now I try to see the world through other people's eyes. And I really seek to understand what they see and empathize with people. And that strategic empathy has not just made me happier and more joyful because I can live life with this positive attitude and like faith in humanity and things like that, but also from a tactical standpoint, it's very effective, when it comes to business and negotiations and things like that, because you can really start to understand where people are really at. And so, yeah, that decision though, to like believe in the good part of humanity or to like kind of be like, man, it's bad. Like that was a big one for me philosophically.
Look, absolutely. I think that's so important to kind of try your best to your ability to understand where people are coming from, kind of understand their intentions, even though, as you mentioned, not right, not proper, not okay by any sense of the imagination, but just kind of understanding why people do what they do. I'm a historian by trade. I have 2 degrees in
Mm.
history, and just learning. People get fascinated by some of the people I wouldn't say I follow, I watch, I read about, and for me, it's just so interesting because it's such a dichotomy from what we're known, what we taught, all that, and just learning more about why people do the things they do on whether it's a small scale or a giant scale.
Yes, absolutely. And understanding why people do what they do is huge because then you can really start to understand why you do what you do, and understanding our own patterns. And that is, that's the road for transformation. That's the road to get whatever you want in your life is understanding what patterns you are currently doing and why you are doing them. And it gives you the ability to change. And that's huge. Absolutely huge.
Look, I couldn't agree more. So, man, on everyone's journey, everyone's path, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown. What are you working on?
Yeah, man, great question. So, what I'm working on right now is primarily focused on building my agency. What I really believe in is that the digital space, like we are transitioning, right? When I look at kind of like, and you're a historian, so you understand this, right? It's like we're kind of going into a new age, right? You had like the agrarian age where like the vast majority of people were farmers. And then we have the industrial revolution, and that's when like the 40-40-40 plan really kind of like made sense. And then now we're moving into this like digital age, and it's like this wild world. And I don't think we're going back. And so I love this new age, and I'm really passionate about helping people take advantage of it because I think it's the age of opportunity. I do think there's a lot of, just like anything in life, right? Positives, negatives, there's going to be challenges, issues, all of that kind of stuff. But I don't think there's ever been a time that it's been a better or more available opportunity for people, the average person, to really become financially free. I mean, if you have some sort of a smartphone and access to Wi-Fi, in this age, you can really become financially free. It is possible. No matter if you're in Africa or if you're in America or where you're at, like you can learn what it takes, the skills it takes to go and do that. And that is amazing. And so I am passionate about that. And I want to help people be able to transition into that. And I believe that the most valuable asset, actually two things. I think there's two things. There's two assets that I think are so important to have to transition in this space. So number one is your personal brand. Because when people look you up, like let me zoom back. First impressions still last a lifetime. We've all heard this, right? But in the digital age, that first impression is often not from a handshake or a conversation, but rather from a Google search or a social media search, right? And so if you can anticipate that and then position your brand in a way that conveys credibility, that conveys authority, that it conveys expertise in a certain area, it gives you a massive competitive advantage on everybody else in your space. And that is an asset that you can build, that you can leverage for the rest of your life. And so when you Google yourself, or when anyone listening to this Googles yourself, what comes up? And if you can control that narrative and you can make it so that you have positive articles that come up, podcasts that comes out, various social medias that you're putting out quality content to consistent people, and you're focused on a consistent message to a specific niche, you can really start to separate yourself from the competition. And when you look at some of the most successful people in the world right now, they're putting their energy into brand, into building their online reputation. And I think there's really something to be said for that. But now, for the first time ever, you can be the average person and you can start to build this. You don't have to have, tens of millions of dollars to pay this giant PR firm in order to go do this. Anyone can be able to go out there and establish that. And so what we are really passionate about is helping people transform their online reputation, being able to give them a digital asset that they can go and leverage for the rest of their life, which is their personal brand. Because again, when I look back in my life, I've been in a lot of different businesses, but the one thing that's been consistent for me is that I am in every business that I move to, right? So it's like you can spend all the time you want building the brand of a business. Like for example, Invigorate, my old agency. If I would have spent all my resources and all my time building that, then guess what? I would have had to completely start over when I started a new agency, right? But I put a lot of that time into my personal brand and resources into my personal brand. And because Luke Hessler was still with the new agency, then people have trust and respect for me because they know who I am as a person. And so then I can leverage that in anything that I do. And I think there's two people out there. I think there's young kids that are looking to go and make it and are like, where should I go and put my energy? I think you should build a personal brand big time. Start when you're young, putting out content, get familiar with the camera, get comfortable speaking to it, different things like this. And then second is you have adults that realize that, yes, I need to figure this out, but they're not quite the tech savvy. They don't know what's going on. And we want to be able to help both of those people be able to go and win and dominate in the digital age.
Luke, I love that. So people want to learn more about you and your agency. Where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me and if you just Google me, you'll see all kinds of stuff that comes up. You can go to my, Instagram is my biggest platform that I post on the most. And so it's at Luke_Hessler. Or if you just Google Luke Hessler, you'll be able to see all my socials and some stuff there as well. So
awesome. Well, Luke, man, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I really appreciate the time. You have great questions. And it's been an honor and a privilege to be here. And I hope the audience got some value from it.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you.
That was another fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.